Hey everybody, how are you? Welcome back to art class. Although today it's not just art class, it's art history class. So as you get further in your school career, you will not just take art, if it's something that you're interested in. You will also take art history. A lot of high schools have art history, but once you get into college, art history becomes more of an important class to take. Now, just because you are taking an art history class does not mean that you are going to college to become an artist or an art teacher or work in a museum. It's a really interesting class that a lot of people take just because they find the history of art interesting. The good thing about art history is it combines art, you guessed it, with history. So it not only talks about the history of art, but also kind of the history of the world, of people. So the specific time period that we're going to be talking about today and making some artwork based on from art history is from about the year 1100 through about 1600. So a pretty big time period. And the type of art that we're going to focus on from this time period is books. Now, when we think of books now, we don't always think about art. A lot of books have illustrations in them. That is definitely art, and you might be thinking that. But the type of books that I'm talking about are from a long time ago. This was a time before we had anything to print books. There's different kinds of printing. The printing that you're thinking about is where you type something on a computer and you hit print and it comes out. That's printing. Before that, there were different kinds of printing, and before that, there were different kinds of printing. But there was a time when we couldn't print anything anyway. So we couldn't easily make the same thing over and over and over and over and over. And if you can't print something, how do you make it? By hand, right? So there were people, usually they were monks, they were religious people, that kind of some of the way that they made money to live on, kind of a job, was to make books. And they did this by writing them with the hands, handmade books. Think about how long that would take. A long time. So you've got these monks, and they are spending a long time. I mean, we're talking months, sometimes years, just making one copy of one book. If you're putting that much effort into something, you probably want it to look nice. On the other side of that, if you're going to be spending a bunch of money on one of these books, because someone's going to charge you a lot of money for a book that they literally wrote by hand. If you're spending that much money, you want it to look nice too. So a lot of these books became what we learned about from the video up above, which hopefully you watched it. They became these things called Illuminated Manuscripts. So a manuscript is just a handmade book, and illuminated manuscript is one that has all kinds of decoration in it. Now, this is not only illustrations, which they had those sometimes, but even things like letters on the pages and the pages themselves and chapter titles and things like that. Everything was used as kind of its own tiny little work of art inside of the book, which was then a larger work of art. One of the kind of main examples would be at the beginning of a page, or at the beginning of a paragraph sometimes, or even just the beginning of a chapter. That first letter was very decorative. Underneath this, nope, there above, that's it. You'll see some examples of just some illuminated letters. This is just kind of letter that they would have used. Again, if you're putting all this effort into something, you want it to look nice. So that's kind of where the idea for today's art project comes from. Again, hopefully you watched the video up above here because they explained it a lot better than I did, and then they also showed the process of how these were made, which I think is super interesting. So today, you are going to make your own illuminated letter. Now this letter is going to be a letter, but we're going to use it as like a self-portrait. So you're going to pick one of your initials, so either the first letter of your first name or the first letter of your second name. You're going to draw that. Think of like a block letter, you know, like a nice big shape drawing of that letter. And then the way that you're going to illuminate it, the decorations that you're going to add are going to be with things about you. And that's how it's going to become a self-portrait. So before you get started, let's go ahead and take a look at the example I made so you can see kind of what I'm talking about, but I'll also kind of explain how it is a self-portrait about me. All right, so here is my example that I wanted to show you of my illuminated letter self-portrait project. There's a lot going on, so I'm going to take a minute to kind of explain what some of the things mean. Although the goal of this would be that you could look at it and learn a little bit about the artist that made it just by looking at it. So you know, sometimes we make abstract art where it doesn't really matter what things look like. Now would be one of the times where we would be making, you know, representative art where it's supposed to represent something. So we want it to look at least a little bit like the thing we're talking about. It can be a much simpler kind of cartoony version. That's fine, but we still want it to look like what we're trying to get across. So since it's a illuminated letter, that's the important part. We'll start with the letter. I went with H, which is my last initial. First letter in holiday is H. I chose to just do a really plain letter because I knew that there was going to be a lot going on. If you want to make a fancy letter, that's fine. It's completely up to you. The inside of my H, I tried to make it look like it was kind of built out of wood. One of the things that some of you might know about me, that you've known me for a while, is that I like to build things. I like to make stuff when I'm not here. And one of the ways that I do that is I build a lot of stuff out of wood. All right, so the next thing down here, we'll talk about just this main outside border where there's kind of a repeated pattern. There's two things going on. There are mountains and then there are green rolling hills. Those are meant to represent kind of the two places that I've spent the most time in my life. I grew up in Colorado, and then around high school, my family moved to Kentucky, and I've kind of been here pretty much ever since, with a few exceptions. So those are the two places that are really important to my upbringing, my life. This next border, as we kind of move from the outside going in, that represents the colors of the color wheel, which that part is to kind of talk about me being an art teacher. As we move in, we'll talk about some of these objects in the background. We've got some art supplies. That should make sense because I am an artist. Down here, we've got a big old mater, big giant tomato. In the summer, my wife and I have a garden that we are proud of, that we like to do. So that's to represent that. We've got some music kind of scrolling through. One of my other kind of hobbies, one of the things I like to do in my pastime, I like to play the guitar, I like to play music. In the background here, we've got a tree. I love being outside. I love camping. There's also a fishing pole there that you can see. That's another thing I like to do in the outdoors is fish. So that hopefully explains a little bit about what's going on in mine. Since these are self-portraits, yours will, of course, be things about you. But I always think it's helpful to see an example to help come up with ideas. So hopefully that'll help you kind of think about the way you might want to arrange yours. Yours does not have to be like mine. Does not have to be like mine at all. Just again, it's an example to maybe help you come up with some of your own ideas. All right, so that's it. That's the plan. Mine was square. Yours does not have to be square. It could be rectangle like a normal piece of paper, or you might want to get creative and cut a shape out and start there. Remember, the important thing is this is a self-portrait. Try and keep your images kind of simple. These aren't going to be, you know, drawings that you spend months and years on, like our buddies, the monks that were making these in the year 1100. But we do still want to be able to tell what it's about, because it's about you, and it's important that your viewer can learn some things about you through this self-portrait. Hooray! That's it. Art history class is over. We're back to art class. Make some stuff. Can't wait to see your illuminated letter self-portrait thing, artwork pieces. Have a good one. See you later.